guys, welcome back to Team Forbidden's YouTube page again. It is Andrew the Collector here. We have a bit of a different setup because we're kind of rearranging things right now. But I wanted to bring you a new deck profile for Runick's. This is a new archetype that came out in the recent deck builder set. It's an all spell-based deck, which you can splash different engines in with it. The most popular variant and the most competitive one is one that uses mostly spells, along with Mystic Mine and even Skill Drain. You can run all kinds of other builds with this, with Fable cards or the Spellbook engine. But today I'm bringing you with the Magical Musketeer engine. Mainly because I tried out all the different builds that you can do with this deck, and I found Magical Musketeer to be the one of the most fun. But if you want to go the competitive route, I highly recommend that you use the Mystic Mine build. It's just a lot more consistent, and it will guarantee the more wins for you. But without further ado, let's just get right into it. So to start out, we have 3 Magical Musketeer Casper. For those who don't know what the Magical Musketeers are, they are an archetype of monsters that allow you to activate the in-archetype spell and traps from your hand during your opponent's turn. And if a spell or trap is activated in the same column that they're in, they get their own individual effects. For instance, Casper's individual effect is that you can search for a Magical Musketeer card. The next 3 is Magical Musketeer Starfire. Her original effect is that you can special summon a Magical Musketeer monster from the deck. Most of the time it's going to be Casper, but if you don't have Casper, then you're probably going to go into your 3rd best, which is Doc. Doc's individual effect is that you can add a Magical Musketeer card from your graveyard to your hand for that recursion. And then our last one is going to be Kid Brave. Pretty much the Graceful Charity. You draw 2 and then discard you discard a Magical Musketeer card as cost, and then you draw 2 cards. But only one. I'm actually thinking of cutting Kid Brave for another Doc because you don't run a whole lot of their spell and trap support, so you can burn through it kind of quickly if you go into the late game, which is why Doc is so essential in the long run. Starfire and Casper are there to get your play started, and Doc is the one that helps you keep the flow of disruptions. But that's it for the monster count. You could run other monsters in here, like Hand Traps or Ash Blossoms, but the deck does have some restrictions to where playing a bunch of monsters isn't necessarily the best strategy, which I'll get into in just a second. Now into the spells, which is obviously the heart and soul of the deck. The first spell is the field spell, Runick Fountain. Fountain's effect is kind of like the Magical Musketeer cards, to where it will allow you to activate the Runick spell and traps, or I should say just Runick spells from your hand during your opponent's turn. And its second effect is that if you activate a Runick quick play spell, you can target up to 3 Runick spells in your graveyard, add them to the bottom of the deck, and then draw that same amount. And the good thing about this is that let's say you select 3 of them. If your opponent tries to DD Crow one of them, the effect will still go through. You'll just send back the remaining ones that you selected, and then you'll draw that same amount. So DD Crowing does not stop this effect because it says up to. It doesn't say a specific amount, which is really good. And then the second best one is Runick Tip. It's your searcher. So the whole point of Runick's is that their quick plays have 2 effects. But if you activate a Runick spell card during the next battle phase, you basically can't enter your next battle phase. That's the restriction and why you shouldn't run too many monsters. So the whole strategy of this deck is to deck out your opponent. So its first effect is that you can add a Runick card from your deck to your hand, and then banish the top card of your opponent's deck face up. And its second effect is the one where all the other Runick spell cards share, is to where you can special summon one of your Runick fusion monsters to your extra monster zone. So all of them have that secondary effect. So henceforth, I'm just going to be sharing their individual effects. But yeah, Runick Tip is your searcher, and it like the other ones, it does banish cards from the top of your opponent's deck. Now, getting into the other Runick cards, we have 3 Runick Freezing Curses and 3 Flashing Fire. These kind of have, I guess you could say, the same similar effect base to where Curse's effect is that you can target an effect monster your opponent controls, negate its effects until the end of the turn, and banish the top 3 cards of their deck. And Flashing Fire destroys a special summon monster that your opponent controls, and you banish the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. And like I said, the secondary effect is that you can special summon from your extra deck. Now, this may be a little bit controversial, but for this particular build, I'm running 3 Runick Slumber. Slumber's effect is that you can target one monster on the field, either player's side of the field. The targeted monster cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects for the first time during this turn. And then you banish the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck face up. I keep wanting to say to the graveyard, but you just banish the top 3 cards of their deck. This one you don't necessarily need to use if you're running the pure Runick build with Mystic Mine, but since you are running the Musketeers and you will want to keep them on board to secure your Musketeer plays, I definitely recommend maxing out on this because you can also protect your fusion monsters, obviously. But if you're not running the Musketeer engine, you could dwindle this down to 2 and use it to protect your fusion monsters or summon the fusion monsters themselves. Now we have 2 Runick Destruction. I'm actually thinking of bumping this up to 3 because I've had incidences where I run into Anti-Spell Fragrance, and I wish I had this or Cosmic Cyclone or MST, which are other options that you could run in this deck because this deck does revolve around quick play spells. But its effect is that you can target a spell or trap card your opponent controls, destroy it, and then send the top 4 cards of your deck face up. So yeah, in terms of banishing capabilities, this one is definitely the highest with 4 because the other ones are either 3 or 2, or in the case of Tip, it's only 1. But yeah, that's another reason why I'm thinking of running 3 of this because the banish effect is just outstanding. And in some cases, it could actually clinch a game for you. And next to the one-ofs, we have 1 Runick's Smitting Storm, or Thors Hammer, as people like to call it. Its individual effect is that you banish cards from the top of your opponent's deck up to the number of cards your opponent controls. So late game, this thing could definitely do a great deal of damage as long as they don't have any interruptions. I'm only running 1 of Runick Dispelling. 90% of the time you use this card to special summon a fusion monster. But if you do have that chance to where your opponent adds a card from their deck to their hand, you activate this, they discard a card, and then you banish the top 2 cards of their deck. It's only 2. You only banish 2, and you send a resource from their hand to the graveyard, which sometimes can help them in their favor, which is why I'm only running 1 of this, because it's a little bit hit or miss. But definitely in the pure builds, you could bump this up to 2, but I have no issues with it at 1. Now, after one of my favorites in the deck, Runick Lure. Have you heard of Dark Room of Nightmare? This is basically Dark Room of Nightmare, but for banishing. It's a continuous spell that says each time a quick play spell, either not just Runick's, but any quick play spell that's activated by you or your opponent, every time a quick play spell is activated, banish the top card of your opponent's deck. I'm only running 1 of this because you can only control 1. They definitely learned their lesson from Dark Room of Nightmare. And it's not once per turn, which means it can chain onto itself. So let's say you activate a Dispelling to special summon a fusion monster, and then you wanted to chain Destruction to pop a spell card that they control. After this chain resolves, this will go Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2, and then banish 2 additional cards along with the 4 from Destruction. So that's 6 cards that you banish off of your opponent's deck, off of 2 chain links. So this card is definitely good. A lot of people actually don't run this, which I highly disagree with, but you definitely need it in this deck because it provides so much free advantage. Unfortunately, it is mandatory, so it has to be the first chain link, so you can't chain block your opponent, which is actually something that you can do with your Musketeers and your Fountain. Because let's say you have your Fountain on the field, and let's say you have Casper, and then you activate a spell card. You can, depending on which situation that you have, you could either go Chain Link 1 with Casper or Chain Link 2 Fountain, and if they have Ash, they'll have to Ash the Fountain and your Casper can go through, or vice versa. So definitely keep that in mind because chain blocking in this deck is relatively easy as long as you have the right setup for it. And then if you're going second, Dark Ruler No More, I do main this. Definitely if you are running the pure Runick deck, this is definitely a must. But honestly, this card is a must in this format because of tier elements, because of sprites mostly. Dragon Link is starting to get up there. But yeah, you could side this in the Musketeer build, but it's up to player preference. But I've always had it in the main deck this whole format, and I'm not really thinking of changing that. Then for the one-ofs, we have one Terraforming, and then we have one Call by the Grave, because hand traps do hurt us, and we want to get to our fountain as soon as possible. And if you are running Mystic Mine, definitely. I would even say if you're running Mystic Mine, run Demise of the Land, which is another quick play spell, ironically. And the last spells that we have are 3 Musketeer Cross Domination. And I might as well throw in the rest of the Musketeer cards in here, because that's the remaining cards. 2 Desperado, 1 Dancing Needle, and 1 Last Stand. And like I said, as long as you have a Musketeer monster on your side of the field, you can activate these from your hand during your opponent's turn. So Cross Domination's effect is that it's a quick play spell. Target a face-up monster on the field. Changes attack and defense to zero, and negates effects until the end of the turn. So definitely good disruption, especially with your Freezing Curse, because this one also negates the effects. So this provides good synergy for disrupting your opponent. Desperado is just a trap card that pops a face-up card on the field. Last Stand is a counter trap, which is really nice, and you negate a spell or trap card that activates. And Dancing Needle is a DD Crow that can target up to 3 cards in your opponent's graveyard. So yeah, that is definitely good. And like I said, the Musketeer engine definitely works really well with this build because it's just interrupting your opponent's play and decking them out as quickly as possible. Now off to the fusion monsters. We have 3 Hugin the Runick wings. The one stipulation about this deck, which I'll actually get into in a minute, is that when you special summon these cards off the Runick spells, they have to go to the extra monster zone. The card specifically says special summon it to the extra monster zone, but I'll get to that in a minute. So Runick Wings effect is that when it's special summoned, you can discard a card to add a Runick Fountain from your deck to your hand, and then if any of your cards would be destroyed, you can banish her instead. And if this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can recur her back into the extra deck. I'm actually thinking of taking her down to 2 because of that reason, because she does recur herself, but I don't really have any other space in my extra deck, but we'll get to that as we go along. Probably the more important one, in my opinion, is Munin, the Runick Wings. This one is like Hugin, where when it's special summoned, you can search you discard to search the Runick continuous spell card, which is Allure. But that's really good. But the more important one is that he provides target protection. So no Twin Twisters, no Cosmic Cyclone or MST. But it's not like a continuous protection. You have to banish him to get that effect off. And during each player's end phase, mandatory, you gain 1,000 life points. So that can be really good in time. So yeah, run 3 of it for the protection. And then 3 of the Gary the Runick Fangs. His effect is that he can't be destroyed by card effects. And if this special summon card from the extra deck, if this card is special summoned from the extra deck, you can target 1 non-quick play Runick spell in your graveyard, so you can add your Lure or your Fountain back to your hand. So he provides good recursion. And when this card is destroyed by battle, you can target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy it. So let's say that it comes your turn and you have one of your quick play spells in your hand, and it goes into standby phase, and they attempt to activate Anti-Spell Fragrance. You can chain one of your Runick cards to special summon him, and So that way, your opponent once your opponent gets rid of him by battle, you can use this effect to pop the anti-spells, and then it'll free up your plays for next turn. So yeah, you can run these ratios however you want, but I at least recommend at least 2 of each, depending on the build that you want. A lot of people like to run the Fabled engine with this because they're tuners that special summon themselves when they are discarded. So you can either get a level 6, 5, or even a level 4 out using those monsters because they are level 2. The Fable tuners are level 2. And these are special summoned out really easy, basically free bodies. So it's up to you. Because the synergy with that is, like, let's say you have a Fable monster in your hand. You special summon out your Runick Wings. Use this effect to discard the Fable monster to search out a lure. The Fable monster will special summon itself, and then you can synchro these away for a level 5. That's the strategy with the Fableds. Now here's where the controversy comes with this deck. Max. Definitely, but first off, definitely run 3 of him if you're running the Musketeer engine, because when you need him, he definitely comes in clutch. So since the Runick monsters need to be special summoned to the extra monster zone, that means that once you special summon this and it stays in there, you won't be able to summon out your max. But a lot of the times you don't go into max because you need to go into these a lot more often, especially if you don't have your resources. But yeah, max is just good to have because when he is link summoned, depending on your opponent's board, you can special summon Runick monsters from your deck to your side of the field equal to the spell and trap cards that they control, or you can add Musketeer monsters from your deck to your hand equal to the number of monsters that they control. So yeah, he definitely doesn't come up as often as you want, but I'd rather have him and not need him than not have him and need him. And the other 3 spots are just Super Poly targets. I don't run Super Poly in the main deck because I can't find my copies. But you can definitely if you have them, you can definitely put them in the side deck. Dracostapelia is still good. Starving Venom Dragon is good. And I am running this because there are situations nowadays to where you can use him. But the new fusion monster from what's it called? The latest set that came out. I don't have it. It's $15 right now, and I just haven't had the time to go out and grab it, so I'm putting this instead. But if you have it, definitely run it instead of this because it's the better Super Poly target. But yeah, guys, that is the Runick build with Magical Musketeers. If you want to see me do a different Runick build with whether it's a pure with Mystic Mine or with the Spellbook engine, definitely comment down below, and I'll be sure to get that to you guys. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and we will catch you guys later.